Hi, my name is Agasha Mutesasira. I am in my third year in hospitality management. I'm still getting used to saying that. First, I want to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded territories of the Nanaimo First Nations, where I have the privilege to live, laugh, and grow. This picture that you've been looking at for a couple seconds now is me nervously wheeling down to get my high school diploma, unaware of the beautiful adventure that I'd be heading into. When I first heard of VIU, it was at a fair held back home in Uganda. Nothing really caught my fancy at that point, so I put the option aside. At first, planned to go into the BBA, so I felt like my options were vast, but once I made the decision to switch to hospitality, that was not the case anymore. A friend then reminded me of VIU, and when I looked up the course, I knew that was a better fit for me. Even though I look like I am ready to take on the world in this picture, that was not the case. Now, I was told that VIU was on a hill, but for some reason I didn't think they actually meant that. As my family and I drove up the hill for the first time, worry began to fill my mind. Was I going to be able to make it to class? Would people be nice enough to help me? Would I be independent? Would the university experience be what I wanted it to be? Is uni life really for me? All while trying to admire the beautiful space the beautiful place that actually was. Now, even though I never voiced my feelings to my parents, the silence laughter was deafening. During this moving process to residence, my parents made it a point to remind me that I've accomplished so much and they would always be proud no matter what I decided to do. Then I remembered my last name, Mutesasira, which translates to he who doesn't feel sorry for himself, or in my case, she who doesn't feel sorry for herself. So it was going to be a lot, but I was going to make it work. You must be wondering why you're looking at a vending machine. For my first year, a vending machine was a representation of me being unable to accept help, thinking that if I did, it meant that I was incapable. Going to the cafeteria involved me going up a couple of ramps and finding elevators that were still a maze to me at that point. So in efforts to not allow people to see me struggle or to give the impression that I may be a potential burden, I would remain in the building for majority of my classes, where I would have my lunch from a vending machine. My lunch consisted of a packet of barbecue Lays and peach iced tea for a couple of months. Desperate for change, my smart drive came to the rescue. I never appreciated technology so much until the day I made it up residence to the upper campus on my own. I was so grateful and stay grateful to the university for gifting me the smart drive and allowing me to shift my energies to my studies and making connections. This was one of the first days I felt like I could actually do this thing called university. Living on residence was the biggest shift. From using a style bathroom I hadn't used before to wondering how on earth I was going to maintain my room on my own. My parents ended up finding somebody to help me occasionally with laundry and cleaning my room. Where I was relieved, I was embarrassed because everyone else in residence seemed to be doing things a different way. So every now and then I had to remind myself that having help doesn't mean weakness, it just means that I'm in my own race. On the flip side, being on residence allowed me to have spontaneous photo shoots such as this one. When homesickness came, it came heavy. There were days when it was hard to be present and calling home and high school friends were my remedy. Being able to switch through and sound Canadian in some situations, culture shock still hit hard. So to still be able to call my family and say things like Banange, which means OMG, or Sulabulunji, which means good night, felt great when it felt like my mother tongue was drifting away. Looking back, I would not have made it through some of my first years without those phone calls. First year was also realizing how small the world actually is. On my second day on the island, I met my French teacher that taught me in high school in Uganda at Tim's by surprise. And then 2 days later, I met my biology and social studies teacher who taught me there too. I knew they moved to Canada, but not where. So to find out they had moved to a small island, I didn't know how many more signs I needed that this was a place for me. When it came to my program, I was excited, but also nervous about the serving aspect of it. Being the only wheelchair user and the first student in a wheelchair that my professors had worked with had me anxious. It later became a great opportunity for me to practice amplifying my strengths. I also had to learn how to be creative in finding a process that worked for me while maintaining serving standards. One of my biggest memorable moments from VIU was winning VIU's Got Talent. not only because of the win, but because I fought through some of the negative thoughts, such as I was a first year, I could not possibly make an impact. The whole experience showed me that with pushing through some discomfort, I could get what I want. My dad watched me perform an original for the first time, and that made it even more special. Year one had many firsts, and among those firsts was making the dean's list. This was the first time I felt like my hard work in the classroom had finally paid off. After my injury, I did not put much effort into my education until recently. So pushing myself the extra mile and being acknowledged for was a reminder to me that it's never too late to turn a new leaf. Following the same theme of firsts, the friends that are in this picture are a couple that aren't gave me the first surprise birthday celebration. Knowing these individuals for only about 6 months made it even more touching. I believe living on residence made these connections possible. First year came with a lot of growth. When it comes to my graduate attributes, I feel like I was able to make the most growth with my oral communication in a more communication area through different classes in my course that required group work and public speaking. In addition to that, my critical thinking was tested quite a bit, not only from my program, but also from navigating spaces that were not built for a wheelchair user. Overall, my first year experience had its ups and downs, but I appreciate every moment because it made me who I am today. Before I go, I'd like to leave you with some advice. This year may not have turned out the way we all expected it to turn out, but it's still a great opportunity to make memories. So let's all stay safe and do this all together, and I wish you all the best.